You're listening to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, Episode 5, Planning a Game V1. Today we talk about the two phases of planning your games. How much time should you put into planning and developing your games? Specifically, this episode we dive into the development phase of your game. The podcast did start running long on the topic of the development phase, so we are talking about the maintenance phase in a future episode. We also mentioned some resources for developing NPCs. These are chaoticshiny.com and springhole.net. If you'd like to join the discussion or leave us feedback, please contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, please subscribe, leave a review, or tell a friend about us. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and across from me is the man with the plan, Jared.
Hey, everybody.
If you've been listening to us, you can send us feedback and questions and other comments to levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. And if you like the show, subscribe and share it with a friend. If you're the rest of your gaming group, that'd be great because that's how we're kind of growing the podcast organically, word of mouth at the moment. So feel free to share us.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So Jared, how you doing tonight?
I'm tired. It's been a long week.
Yeah, I hear that. I totally hear that. What's been going on?
It's just work. You know, we're coming out with two new releases. If our listeners don't know, both Aaron and I work in the computer industry. He works with more.
I'm a programmer. He's more of the
operations
side and the operations of the computer stuff. We don't work together, but we understand each other's pain.
Awesome. I'm just saying.
I think it'd be cool to work.
We would do damage.
Yeah. And then we could be like, okay, I had a long week. And I'd be like, yeah, I had it too. I was right there, man.
Right next to you. All right, but we're totally, what?
Yeah, we're
23 seconds in and we're already off track?
Yeah, we're way off track. So anyways, today we're going to be talking about planning a game.
This one, so I've been looking forward to doing this topic since we even thought about doing this podcast.
Well, you're a very organized person, so I'm sure you're just like, oh man, planning a game, I love it. Give me more of the plan.
Oh God, so if this one goes over, it might be a two-parter, just because I could talk about this for days. The first thing I do want to start off with, though, is to inspire all my storytellers, my DMs, my GMs, my Master of Ceremonies. Again, shout out to Mist. I'm sorry, I'm addicted to this world.
Are you just gonna start calling yourself the Master of Ceremonies?
I might.
Okay.
It's kind of a sexy title.
All right.
I am.
We'll see if we agree with that or not.
Yeah.
We'll give you the Caesar thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay.
They're all like Jared's lost his nuts. Jared's lost his nuts. Jared's gone nuts or lost his mind. One of the two.
I think you just answered your own question. So.
God help me. So planning. One of the finest quotes, and although as a former history teacher, historically, Thomas Edison, horrible person in history. I mean, just absolutely awful. But he did have some very tremendous quotes. One of which is genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. And this is the key, the absolute key to storytelling. So to give you a little bit of background, when I create a game, I will spend hours building a game. I go to a very high level of detail. I plot out everything, plan out everything, but I will tell you, a lot of time is actually spent sitting back and thinking about what's my next move. If storytelling and getting that story together takes you hours, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Should it monopolize your life? Absolutely not. You should be out playing with your kids and cooking dinner for the wife and
going to work. Doing the things you want to do. But
don't let it monopolize your life. But
if it does take a lot of your time, or if that's something that you derive a lot of pleasure out of, the gaming experience and all this, then the planning process is a lot of it is what you put into it is what you're going to go. That your game is going to represent the function of how much time you put into it.
It's going to be very obvious to your players how much prep time that you actually put into it. Gaming groups on YouTube, masterful works of art, a lot of them.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Hours were put into that. That isn't them flying by the seat of their pants going, let's do this. It's hours of planning. It's developing NPCs, motivations, and such and so forth. So when it comes down to it, you need to put in the time. You need to set time apart to really develop a good, solid game. This also includes maintenance. A lot of storytellers that I've worked with, that I've seen, they put everything into developing the start of the game. But after the first session, nothing got done, and you could see it. They didn't maintain. And just like anything else in this world, you've got to maintain it to keep it at peak performance. And that again will turn a good game from into a great game. Is that maintenance?
Yeah, and since we haven't gotten to our shameless plug, it will level up your game. Ha ha ha.
Very subtle.
I know, very subtle. But no,
I hardly caught it.
Sorry, I smacked you in the face with it.
But shout out to Cheetos. What? What?
But no, what Jared's saying there is 100% correct. And I'm not saying that every game needs to have an equal amount of prep time. Jared has a certain love for, this is like one of the things that you really enjoy.
This is my hobby. This is, some people, I tell people all the time, because I'm very open with my gaming. Like, my coworkers, they're like, so what are you doing Saturday night? I'm like, Dungeons and Dragons. And they're like, huh? I'm like, yeah. This is my hobby. Some people build boats, those little boats in the bottles. And some people, they practice archery. Me, I write stories, and I love it. And I love every part of it. It's a passion.
So Jared puts a lot of time into it. But what I'm saying is that, what we mean to say here is that if you put no prep time or very little prep time into your game, unless you are a masterful person at improv and just flying by the seat of your pants, it doesn't matter if it's a one shot or not, you're gonna see a huge drop off in the engagement for your players, and your players will know. Your players will know that
they're gonna know, and if you're not engaged, they're not engaged.
Because your players are gonna say things like, "We want to go do this. We want to go do this. We want to go do this," and the GMs who are typically not planned well will not have an answer for, we don't want to, if you are not on the right line, you're off the line, you're off my plan, and everything's gone awry, and they'll know that you had no thought into what could happen in this game if we go left, or something like that.
And I'm gonna cover that, and that was covered in a previous podcast too. If you guys want to reference back to the Best Laid Plans podcast, that's a helpful tool for when your players go off the beaten path. The problem is, if you haven't developed any alternative paths or planned out any contingencies, it's noticeable. It's very noticeable. So again, perspiration, rule number one. You need to put work into your game. I would say a good amount of maintenance work for a game, you need to put in a bare minimum, and it's just like writing. You need to put in a bare minimum of 60 minutes, at least a week. Just making sure that you've digested what happened last session, and that you're developing what will happen in the next session. If there are going to be any surprises, is there going to be a fight, is just at least 60 minutes, please.
Exactly. So there's the two phases of planning. The first one is, I made a game. I know how it's going to, the development process. I've made the game. I know these are my NPCs. This is my villain, or this is my end goal for the characters. This is, we're going to talk about this in a moment. Victory condition. This is my loss condition. Okay. And the players then will be able to execute on that. But then after the first night, your players are going to do a bunch of stuff. And like I said, if you want to listen to our previous game, this is where the second phase of planning comes in. Okay, we're now in maintenance mode. So your players have done things that are either according to plan or not according to plan. How do I get them? How do I make sure they have the right information that's going to put them back on the plan?
Yep.
Okay, so that's what you have to do as a GM in that maintenance phase. And like Jared said, minimum probably an hour a week.
I would say a good hour.
You might need to create new NPCs. You might need to give NPCs more information. You might want to come up with a sub-villain. because the players have decided to do something. If you listen back to the Best Laid Plans podcast, you might want to create something in this maintenance mode that expands upon the story that your players are going down right now to
Right.
give them that. Like, this is why you have the maintenance mode.
And in that maintenance mode, sometimes it'll take an hour. You need that good solid hour, I would say. But sometimes it might take more. If they go to the, I think in that previous podcast, it was Kushla. Kushla, was it?
That sounds right, but we can
Kushla
come up with
Hills?
another one. We'll call it the Malacca Hills this
The
time.
Malacca Hills. Okay, we're going with the Malacca Hills this time. God dang you and your naming brain generator thing.
And they're a group of idolaters, so they're
They're idolaters? Christ, what kind of village are we building here? I go to church on Sundays. To have the Malacca Hills might require you to up your maintenance time to 2 hours, 3 hours. Just like any hobby, you need to put in that time. But time wasted is not effective. It's if you're sitting down and all you're doing is generating NPCs. Okay, I need NPCs, NPCs. NPCs are fantastic, especially when you got a good fight that you want to throw down. You need to build those villains. Don't waste too much time on that, though. Maintain time management. How much time am I going to spend on the story? How much time am I going to spend on the setting? How much time am I going to spend on my NPCs? All these are divisible. The first thing that I always say that you need to tackle is the story. What happened last week in a maintenance mode? What story am I going to tell in a development mode? Because without these things, you don't need an NPC.
Well, let's maybe tackle the development mode first. So
yeah, let's focus on
that. Because like Jared said, this is probably a much bigger topic than we can cover in about 35, 40 minutes. And Jared loves this sort of stuff, so we can come back to like the maintenance mode and working through that. So let's say you're starting putting pen to paper, or you're starting to type on a computer. We use a tool called Roll20 to do a lot of our game development and share our game, because we have one remote player and we've got a bunch of players who are available here. So that tool works for us, but let's say you have a bunch of people in the room. So you might just use pen and paper, but where do you start, Jared? How would you?
So the first thing that I always kind of establish is first, what is my tagline? I call it my elevator pitch. I don't call it my elevator pitch. My brother taught me the term elevator pitch. He's in the for those of you who don't know him, he is in the movie industry. So what's my tagline? A band of adventurers go on a mission to rescue the princess. A simple one sentence, or maybe 2 or 3 sentence establishment of the main plot. So that's what I'm going to create first. Is laying down that primary. So think in action items. Think where they start and where they end. A group of cubicle computer programmers discover a rogue computer virus that is creating AI terminators bent on world destruction and must stop them. Bam. Very short, very put together. I know where I'm going, and where, in the event that I get lost in my creation, I can refer back to my tagline. Okay, get me back on track. This is what I'm going for. The second thing that I'm going to establish is my theme. What is the theme that I'm going for? Is it an adventure? Is it a mystery? Is it a slash and hack? How will I present the plot? Because discovering let's go back to the princess example. Rescuing the princess doesn't always have to be rush the castle. The princess might be hidden away somewhere, and it's a mystery to find her. It's a lot of talking to people. Maybe she ran away.
Exactly. I mean, your story could be more in depth than like princess got kidnapped and put into a dungeon. You have to go get her. Okay, you might want to have more intrigue around. Well, why did she get kidnapped? Who kidnapped her? Are you going to
kidnapped her for love?
Are you going to include this level of mystery in your game? These are the questions you get to ask to broaden your game and make it better. And this is part of the development phase of the game, is you're trying to fill in the details about what happened. A lot of times Jared has told me work backwards.
Backwards design methodology.
Yeah, backwards design methodology. So you know what happened okay, and why it happened, and your players defeat the villain. Okay, what happens before that? What happens before that? What happens before that?
Correct. And in just a warning for anyone who it's like backwards design methodology for storytelling. Backwards design methodology, if you Google it, actually is a teaching tool. When we create lesson plans, we work backwards.
Can you tell Jared was a teacher?
8 years. Loved it. But working from the rear always helps me because when you're developing the road, it helps you keep track of what gets them from point A to B to C to D to E. But the problem is working from the front, I've commonly found, is that I start building that road and I've realized that I'm off course from where I need to go. And I've already built like 17 checkpoints.
It's kind of like a maze. Like if you think about it, for whatever reason, when you do a maze, if you start at the end and work your way back in, it always seems to work better.
So much easier.
Okay, if you start at the beginning and you work your way out, it for whatever reason just doesn't work very well. Like your mind doesn't seem to wrap around it as well as that. I find for me the thing I find useful, and right now we're telling investigation stories. Primarily, this is the story that I'm familiar with telling at the moment, is that I write down all my NPCs and sort of what they know and how the players would connect dots A to B to C to D all the way to Z, okay, to get to the end of their story.
You're building the network.
I'm doing like a flow diagram of how this all connects and alternate paths to the end.
And that's a brilliant way of doing it. Always alternate paths. Again, we can always refer back to the Best Laid Plans podcast because those alternative paths so helpful. I mean, the having it prepared like, oh well, if they don't go talk to the merchant, they can always talk to the city guard.
Yeah, the more you do it, the more you'll kind of be able to predict what your players might do in a game.
And that's knowing your players.
And it's knowing your players. So like the more that you kind of set up one of these games, you kind of know the types of information that they're going to seek out if they're trying to solve your mystery or rescue the princess. Okay, so in those sorts of situations, you'll know, well, they always go talk to the jailer, or they always go talk to the policeman, okay?
For our investigative purposes, my players always talk to the coroner or the doctor. They will always stop by the medical practitioners. So I make sure that I have a very full understanding of the medical side of it.
And by doing this sort of flow thing as well, in my opinion, it also keeps you from missing. It basically makes it so the players never miss the information. They have multiple ways to get to the end of my story. At some point, you narrow your scope pretty deep because everybody starts giving the same information. So it's like, well, it's the man with the red hat. And the next person you talk to is like, it's the man with the red hat. And the third person you talk to is like, it's the man with the red hat. So you're like, well, it's the man with the brown hat. No, you guys are way off.
No, guys, come back. So after I establish the theme, networks are great. So that's when I get into, after I establish the theme and I establish my tagline, I'm going to move into the guts of it. Who knows what in establishing that network. NPCs. When developing NPCs and developing your network, make sure you know a few key points. And this is something that I know Aaron learned later. Make sure you know what they do for a living.
Yes, the mundane things your players will ask them are the most important things to know about the person. So, what do they do for a living? Okay,
Where do they live?
If they have family, who are they? Okay, can you name the family? Okay, where do they live? You don't necessarily need to present the family.
No.
But you should be able to describe, especially if you're going to do something. Let's say you build an NPC that has a complex family tree. Okay. Think about the planning that you need to do to make that work, okay? Because if you don't plan the family tree and you get asked questions about the second cousin, okay, you don't want to sit there with a blank stare on your face and not know how to answer that question. Don't only answer about the important people.
Yep.
Okay.
Make sure everyone's developed. Yeah. They don't have to be developed equally, but they do need to be developed.
They need to be fleshed out enough that you can answer enough basic questions about that person. Like Jared said, what do you do for a living?
What do you do for a living? Where do you live? Do they have a dog? What's great for this is you can go on the internet and search numerous random character generators, it cuts down your development time so much, and sometimes brings, I guess, unexpected results. For example, in one of our previous games, I used a random generator to identify likes and dislikes. I had a female NPC who the random generator pulled likes beards. Well, we were running a game where we had a very bearded player character, so a relationship literally grew over around her. I guess one would call it
for attraction for beard.
Attraction. Thank you. Instead of using another word, her attraction for beards, and literally it was really. When I look back on it, it was a very cool element to that story.
It gave a lot of life to the character. I actually thought the likes and dislikes were very clever. I wish that I have incorporated them more in my games because it gives. It's a way to give life to NPCs that you didn't necessarily plan on giving life to. Okay, your description generators are very. You have a description generator that generates descriptions.
I do.
What's that again?
Dang it. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
All right, well, Jared will get it to me. I'll insert it at the beginning of the podcast here. We'll get you the information for it. But essentially what it does is it's like blah, blah, blah is a Caucasian brown-haired male, in their early 30s. And, and it gives you, like they wear this type of clothing and, like, this.
Actually, the generator doesn't give me clothing.
You make that up? Really? No way.
Oh, yeah. That description bar, so for our listeners, I have a very standardized description of people, for example, and this is a tool, and I welcome you guys to take it across state lines. Looking at you, Arizona. Don't know why this time, but Arizona, I like you. I like the cut of your jib. So here's for an example, I would describe, let's go with something right in front of me. Aaron. Aaron appears to be a Caucasian, brown-eyed male in his brown-eyed human male in his early 30s. Aaron has brown hair that is commonly kept in a shaggy style, with a clean-shaven face. Aaron is average height, athletic build, and I would say rounded facial features. He typically wears long sleeve shirts, jeans, and athletic shoes.
And boom, there you go. You've now created a person that's there, and then all you have to do is give them a couple more details. What do they do for a living? Do they have a family? Where do they live? And
it's fascinating how these fleshed out NPCs can really hit it. So, but don't forget when making those NPCs to establish them in the network. Aaron's network example is a perfect thing. Who do they know from the other NPCs? What information is transferred to them? I generally build backwards design methodology. I'm going to build the last people that they're going to meet generally first. So like the princess, kind of the key, but I build her. And I'm going to build the villain. And then, you know what? It's the queen, and I guess this is where I deviate from backwards design methodology sometimes. The king and queen are going to be the ones that hire. I need the king and the queen. Who are they going to get the information from? Well, now I need to get the captain of the guard, because the captain of the guard was responsible for protecting the princess, so on and so forth. And that's how I develop my NPCs. And as I go along, I tend to make what I call checkpoints. So I built 5 NPCs. Okay? I've got them all laid out. When I have looked at those NPCs, then I establish locations. So, okay, I've created the villain, I've created the princess, I've created the king, the queen, and the captain of the guard. What do we need now? We need the castle described, so I need to know where that is. I need the place where the princess is being kept hidden. I need to describe that. And I need to keep a description in mind maybe of the captain of the guard's quarters. Because my players are probably going to go meet him, and he'll probably take him back to his office. They don't really have offices back in Dark Ages. It's kind of a modern concept.
The quartermasters.
Quartermasters. Who knows?
Whatever. So,
and that's how I develop locations within the network. So I create a side network with the NPCs of locations.
One of the things I do want to stress with the creation of locations and choosing location, be very judicious about where you choose to make your location and how far spreading you want your story to go, because location is the hardest thing. If your characters have to travel across a vast distance to do something, your story is probably more disjointed than you would like it to be at this point. Particularly, like, I have to go to, I'll give you a modern example of it. I start my story in Chicago. Okay, I have to go to. There's a problem in Indiana, or a problem has existed in Indiana. A problem has existed in New York, and a problem has existed in Florida, like Tampa. Okay, so now I've got three places that are very disassociated to one another, and I have to now travel vast distances to go to these different stories in different places. Think about the number of locations on top of that
Absolutely.
multiply based upon all those locations that you add to your story. So even if you're just doing a game in Chicago, for example, or a big city like New York, you can put the important locations within that city. So it doesn't matter where the players go necessarily within the city, but you're limiting the locations that you have to create. Because if you think
my jam though.
New York is your jam. New York's where you like to put a lot of your big city games.
My big city games are almost always in New York.
And whatnot. So, and if you want to use like a example in the past, so you get commissioned by the king at a castle at the town of Morgenstein. Okay, and so the king gives you a quest, and he sends you to this other town. That is your base location. Think of that as your base location.
Yep, you want to have that foundation.
Okay, and then build the other things. So if there's like special caves, or if there's a dungeon or a keep or something else like that that's around that area, only build the locations around that area. Don't be like, well, it could be at the foothills of Corrine, and it could be over there in the west at Glorgenstag, and it could be over there. So I mean, you think about that, like the more places you put together, think about all the additional work you have to put into each one of those. So it's more NPCs, it's more locations, it's more of this. So I urge you to not expand your game in this massive sense, especially in the development phase.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you might do it in the maintenance phase of your game.
Yeah, in the maintenance phase when you got time.
Yeah, but in the development phase, you need to be very focused about where you're going to put your players and what they're going to start doing. If you see the game expanding beyond the reach of where you are in the development phase and the end that you had planned for the development phase, then start building that in the maintenance phase.
Absolutely. So, with branching out locations, setting is always very important. Whenever addressing theme, always make sure that you've got location in mind. Aaron just showed me the time, and I'm like, wow, I have been talking a lot already. Because there's, again, so much to unpack. Digital, how to organize your data. How to organize your data. I've become a corporate stooge.
Well, it happens to the best of us.
Such a corporate stooge. Computers are fantastic, especially word processors, because you can reorganize your data. Please, with your NPCs, one of the things that I always make sure to do is organize them alphabetically. I've seen a lot of players or a lot of storytellers go down the hole of just creating a list of NPCs, and then they're flipping through their notes when in the middle of game, and it takes precious seconds off your game.
It's hard to search, if they're not in alphabetical order. If you use a tool like Roll20, tag your NPCs. Tag your NPCs. So if you want to say tags. Hey, I need to find the cops, okay, then you can just type in cops and it'll pull up all the cops that have the tag. Or I need to find my villain. Okay, I've lost my villain in the sea of NPCs.
Wasn't there a game that you did tags like based off of eye color almost?
I did tags based off of the groups that they were associated to. So I did a vampire game that had they had like 70 NPCs. So they had like their clans associated to it in tags. So I could give you, like, if you're like, I'm going to go see the Lasombra, like I had all the Lasombra. And there were NPCs that you never saw, and I never think that you would have seen. and like that's part of the development process of a game. Is you're going to create a bunch of stuff that probably never gets seen, but having that stuff developed in the development process before you launch night one is crucial, because if your players go and investigate them, then you have some concept of what they know and what they're like, and you don't have to make that up on the fly.
And that's a big part of that. Is something I wanted to hit on so much, and I appreciate you bringing it up. It's my brain just misfired completely.
Oh, yeah, that's all right. But anyways, so Jared will come back to that thought here in a moment. But I mean, what we need to do.
Unnecessary NPCs. Okay, so man, that was a bad one. Unnecessary NPCs. I have oodles of unnecessary NPCs that my players will talk to, and they are fantastic. I will go into explicit detail describing their personalities, clothing, everything. Why? Because it makes it authentic. When your players walk in to the princess's chambers and they speak to the chambermaid, that person needs a personality. It makes it more real. It welcomes the players into your world.
It also makes it more, like Jared said, authentic, but it makes it harder for your players to discern who is important and who is not important. Okay, so part of the deal is that you want to challenge your players to not just give them the answer, unless that's the way you want to tell your story, which is perfectly fine. But if you don't want to tell your players the answer, then you want to be able to make it more of a mystery. Like, whoa, he put this detail into the maid. Like, is the maid important? Like, you want the players to start. You want to start tricking the players in a sense, okay? Because
this is where it comes into red herrings.
Yes, because then you can start adding these red herrings. You can extend your game and make it more fun. Like it's one of the things this is a little off topic. One of the things I would always advise against doing is, hurting your players for the sake of hurting your players. And we can have a podcast on consequences down the line, but a lot of GMs that I've seen will tank games and hurt players for the sake of hurting players. You don't want to do that, but you want to have fun with your players too and challenge them. Yes. So the key is to challenge them without hurting them. Mm-hmm. Okay, and without making it no fun. So by giving them all these descriptors, you are then challenging them and giving them this lush world that they get to kind of play around in.
It's a plethora to explore.
Yes. And if you're telling a mystery or you're telling a story about the rescue and you're trying to get information about someone, having all these NPCs, if you look at like a pre-gen game, you can see it kind of in the generation of what a pre-gen game looks like. They've got a lot of descriptors about the important people.
I have to admit, because I'm so anti-pre-gen, I think I've seen one. Because, I'm just pre-gen games, get out of here.
Yeah, we've done more homebrew stuff forever. I don't think I've rolled in a pre-gen game prior to this, but you think about the effort that goes into writing that booklet. It's 20 pages for you, about a pre-gen game or more. Okay.
I've seen ones that are. I think the only one that I've ever operated with was a White Wolf one, and I think it was over 150 pages.
Yeah, just the insane amount of detail that goes into that. So you think about that for a pre-gen game, and you want to do a homebrew game. This is the most important thing. Putting minimum time. Jared likes to do about an hour a day. Okay, I think that's typically where you like to sit at.
So for me, I find that opportunity. So my wife and I wake up very early. My wife still works at the school. So my wife leaves at about 6:15 in the morning. I don't have to leave for work until about 7:15. So every day I take that hour and I work on my game. And I sit and drink my coffee and enjoy the news while I work on game. And that's the other thing to always remember. Enjoy it. Enjoy the process, because God, when you hit some of those points, it's fantastic. It's a feeling like none other.
Exactly. So I mean, we're gonna have to do a second podcast to get to the maintenance mode of this whole thing here, because the planning, there's just too much to cover.
Maintenance mode, nothing. We didn't even talk about conditions of success and failure.
Get ready for planning a game V2. Okay, so because it's coming down the pipeline pretty soon, because we're gonna have to talk about it. let's give a quick rundown of success and failure.
Okay, so conditions of success and failure is something new. It's kind of part of my year of revision or pushing the envelope for storytelling for me. So all players, again, we want the players, they deserve, I guess with all the work that they also put in as you as a storyteller, but an ending. Whether that ending sometimes be good or bad. So for example, there's nothing wrong with a player or your players getting to the end, and because they have not done certain things, that it's a failure in the end. A great example of this in the real world is how many times police officers end up serving search warrants and they don't find anything. Is it frustrating? Yes. Is it challenging your players to hit it again and hit it a certain way the next time? Yeah. So successes. So for example, for a very standard like sci-fi game, I would recommend, players need to get the fuel cell to be able to power the ship that will break atmosphere so they can escape security forces. That's a very simple condition of success or failure, because if they don't get the fuel cell, they can't break orbit. Is that the end of the game? No, because that condition of failure is they don't break orbit, security forces catch them. Now we have an interesting prison game.
Yeah, so I mean, just to kind of touch on this, because I thought that this is probably the most impactful change that Jared made for our gaming group was the success or failure conditions. You actually did this with the group that we did with Byron and Raj and all them.
Yep, that's the first time I
That
ever
was
did
the
it.
first time you ever did it. You did it in a Scion game, and it was to avoid. It was basically if the players choose to go down the evil route, I have an evil ending for this game. Okay, which was great because the ending was a very good ending in terms of the way it's written and the descriptors involved in it, but it also made you feel bad. Like that was the route, that was the loss. Okay?
Yeah, that was it.
It was a conclusion to a game, but we see that this is a loss to the game itself, and you have one that was the winning version, and since then you've incorporated these in every one of your games, and it's very simple. It's just hey, to succeed you have to do A, B, C, and D. Okay, and the culmination of all those things, which D might be defeat your villain, but the other ones are you uncovered the mystery, you rescued the princess, and you did this. That's how you get to the success version of your game.
This is the keystroke. I have multiple endings to all my games. Nowadays, I have multiple endings. I have a good ending. I have a bad ending. I have an okay ending. For the one that we're in right now, my players are investigating in a foreign country for the first time. I have an ending in the event that they're like, we're kind of done with this. Let's get on a plane and go home. I have an ending for that. No problem. It's a losing ending. It's not the best ending. It's the, I guess, evil ending, but it's still an ending, and it's the outcomes. And I guess when you get into the outcomes of the game, you can really create and craft great. I don't know where I'm going with that one.
I think what Jared's trying to say is that you can create really great games because the game will still feel good and have a concise end point to it. It's not like your game failed and you stopped the game. You hit a bad point of the game. The players lost. Okay, I'm going to call it a loss because it's the loss condition.
Right.
Okay, and they have a conclusion to what their loss means in terms of the impact of what they did. So this is sort of shaping your players to be able to do things in a different way the next game. Okay, so it's a
or the next chapter.
Or the next chapter. Like this is we have this long-standing chronicle here, but I think we can hit on this again in a future podcast. I do want to hit on it again in a future podcast, but I want to give you real brief insight into it here at the end of this. And we will do a planning the game V2. And we're going to talk even more.
Hopefully my brain will be functioning better.
Well, we've been at this for a little while now. So
it's been a long week.
But anyways, guys, we hope you enjoyed the podcast. You can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. Again, subscribe, share the podcast, tell your friends, let anyone else you know that does gaming come and enjoy the game with us. And we hope you enjoyed the episode. For Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a good night, guys.
Good night, everyone.